Welcome back. All right, an idea that I had, and so here is the first. I wanted to talk about the first ever WrestleMania because I'm old enough to remember it. I'm old enough to remember the build to it. I remember Hulk Hogan and Mr. T hosting Saturday Night Live, and that's when I was very much into Saturday Night Live and just being fascinated by what I was seeing, and I wasn't really that into wrestling at that point in time. WrestleMania 1 was shown on closed circuit TV, which is the precursor for what we would qualify as pay per view now. And I didn't see it on closed circuit TV, but I was starting to watch the weekly wrestling programs. And they did show snippets of WrestleMania during their weekly shows after WrestleMania. And things really changed. Now, of course, with Hulk Hogan, he became a massive star because of the movie Rocky 3. Rocky movies were huge. And of course, Mr. T would be from Rocky 3 as well and ends up coming into the wrestling world and all that fun stuff. So, what we see now in wrestling, and part of the reason why I'm doing this video is because there's discussion about Logan Paul and his place in wrestling, but wrestling has a very long history of taking stars who are considered mainstream, bringing them in, and promoting them and giving them main event spots, as Mr. T got. And Mr. T would be back for the second WrestleMania as well. But today I wanted to focus on the first WrestleMania. And the first thing I wanted to focus on was match times. So the longest match in this event was 13 and a half minutes, which was the main event. The shortest match was officially 9 seconds, although it was actually 24 seconds bell to bell. But either way, it's considered to be the shortest match in wrestling history and or WrestleMania history until John Cena got a bit of a squash there when they were against. This the whole Wyatt thing. We'll get to that when we get there. But the first WrestleMania was kind of quaint, and it when you look at this card, it shows something that wrestling has lost: jobbers, guys who put other people over. I've talked about this. I think part of what hurts the product now is that it used to be a wrestler would come in, they'd go over against the jobbers, they'd spend a couple of months working themselves up, building themselves up, fans getting to know who they were, and then you'd put them into matches with, mid card guys and then move your way up to the main event. You knew when a wrestler was ready for that push when they'd fight Iron Mike Sharp, who was the top when it came to the jobbers. But at any rate, the first match was Tito Santana winning at 4:49 into the match against the Executioner, which was Buddy Rose in a mask. Vince liked to put guys in masks. I'm sure we'll talk about that in other WrestleManias we're going to look at, but the Executioner was just a jobber. If you saw the Executioner in the ring, you knew he was going to take the pin. There were times that he might get a victory here and there, just to keep that idea alive that maybe he was going to pull something off. I was a big fan of Mr. X myself, but Mr. X, as far as I remember, never won a match. King Kong Bundy, 9 seconds for him to beat SD Jones, Special Delivery Jones. Special Delivery Jones, also one of those top jobbers. So I mentioned Iron Mike Sharp was the guy that you knew if they beat Iron Mike Sharp, they were moving into the mid card. Special Delivery Jones was the guy you would beat as you're moving into the mid card and into the matches where maybe you weren't sure whether they were going to win or not. Bundy was a big man. He was definitely a big wrestler, and he was on his way to a main event push for WrestleMania 2. Going back to Tito Santana, Santana wins that match with a figure four. He used the figure four because his next target was Greg the Hammer Valentine, who was the Intercontinental Champion at the time. And the battles between Santana and Valentine were one of the things that really got me into wrestling. They had a cage match that was fantastic, and it was right up there for me with the Dusty Rhodes Ric Flair cage match in NWA, which of course became WCW. Ricky Steamboat defeated Matt Bourne. This was Doink the Clown before the makeup, and that took 4 minutes and 39 seconds. So what's interesting is by today's standard, if somebody loses a match in less than 5 minutes, we consider that to be jobber territory. Oh, look at that. They ruined him. So we're 3 matches into the card, and combined they have less than 10 minutes. So this is part of the reason why now there's so many matches that go 20 minutes or longer, and I feel like there's too many instances where that's the case. If you look at UFC as an example, these are guys who are actually, punching and fighting with one another. Those matches don't normally go for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I know wrestling is staged, but still, having the occasional surprise result of less than 5 minutes, I don't think hurts anything, and I think you can get more matches on a card that way. But anyways, Yeah, Steamboat. I was a huge fan of Ricky Steamboat at the time. I still look back and think he was the best wrestler who never had the WWE World Title. Um, and the rumor at the time was there was the politics from Hulk Hogan that prevented that from taking place. Then you get the second longest match on the card, and I'm kind of surprised this is the second longest match. 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Brutus Beefcake, and so much beefcake, I put an extra E in there. I could leave it, but I'm not going to because then that's all I'm going to see, and that'll drive me insane. So I'll use a different color of blue here because why not? But yeah, Brutus Beefcake against David Sammartino. Uh, so Bruno Sammartino was I would say still probably the best WWF champion of all time. Sold out Madison Square Garden for years. Absolutely fantastic champion in WWF. And the plan was that David Sammartino, who had the look, could be the next one, but it just wasn't there. That ends up going to a double disqualification as Bruno Sammartino, who was a ringside, got into it. Johnny Valiant was at ringside. He got into it. Johnny Valiant, not a lot of Johnny Valiant when I was watching WWF. He was out pretty quickly after I started watching. But Beefcake ends up being a pretty decent mid-carder in WWF, and of course known to be friends with Hulk Hogan. If you watch The Dark Side of the Rings, that makes this a little more interesting, doesn't it? Right? So I figured good time to start a series. Then the Junkyard Dog defeated Intercontinental Champion Greg the Hammer Valentine by countout. Junkyard Dog might have been one of the most over wrestlers I ever saw who never won a belt in WWF. Junkyard Dog was a very good wrestler, good worker. Definitely a unique character in the ring. Unique moveset as well. And for whatever reason, Vince never put a belt on him. Tito Santana would have the Intercontinental title against Greg Valentine. They go back and forth. Of course, eventually Randy Savage comes in. He and Ricky Steamboat had some great matches as well. But Junkyard Dog kind of just, he's in the mix. And he did ultimately put other guys over. He is, mid card. It's too bad he didn't win the Intercontinental title, to be honest, because he definitely had the work ethic. Then you get into the tag belts. I loved the U.S. Express. I loved how over the top the U.S. Express was, and they were against the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. The U.S. Express was Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham, and so I was a huge fan of Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham at the time. And they lose the tag titles to Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, which I did groan about at the time. I wasn't necessarily overly happy about that. Looking back now, I totally get it. You have to have heels and faces, and you got to kind of balance that out in terms of who's winning. But yeah, that match goes 6 minutes and 55 seconds as well. So back-to-back matches with posted times of 6 minutes and 55 seconds, both of them title matches. If this happened now, the internet would melt down. The internet would absolutely melt down. Are you kidding me? This match only got 6 minutes? Because internet's done that. Then the women's match. Now, think about the placement here. You've got the tag titles, or not the women's match yet, but we've got the Intercontinental match, the tag match, and I will still make this point. The women's title is the second to last match of the night. Before that, you have Andre the Giant, who was undefeated in WWF at the time. Now, he wasn't undefeated in his wrestling career to that point. They did portray it that way, though. They portrayed it that Andre the Giant was the unstoppable force and the immovable object at the same time, if he chose to be, because Andre was so big that if he decided, I don't think I'm laying down, good luck. He's not going to. His feud with Big John Studd. John Studd was a big man, but not compared to Andre. And so going into that match, and I remember being invested in that because I really, as a little kid, I wasn't a big fan of Bobby Heenan. Well, a little kid, I was like 12 when this event took place. But Andre the Giant winning the Body Slam Challenge with John Studd, it was pretty obvious he was going to win. John Studd wasn't picking him up because, again, if Andre decides you're not picking me up today, you're not picking him up. But yeah, so it's a $15,000 challenge. Andre tried to throw the money out to the crowd. Bobby Heenan grabs the bag back and runs off. I knew as well going into that match, there's no way they're going to throw $15,000 out to the crowd. That's just not going to happen. And it didn't. So Andre wins that, and it was a feel-good moment, which you have after. So looking at this, face wins, heel wins, face wins, double DQ. Face wins, though, by countout, so it doesn't feel great, right? Because the title doesn't change hands. The heels win, the face wins, and then you get into the feel-good moments here, too, because the last three matches kind of make the fans happy. The next one was the women's match. So now we'll get to the women's match. First off, it has 6 minutes and 14 seconds. So more time for Wendy Richter's match than there was for Andre the Giant's. Part of that probably being Andre the Giant's mobility. You get like 5-minute matches out of him. But Wendy Richter defeated Leilani Kai for the women's title, 6 minutes and 14 seconds. Famously, this is when you have Cyndi Lauper involved and Fabulous Moolah, the now infamous Fabulous Moolah, being at ringside for Leilani Kai. Wendy Richter wanted some money. She was a huge draw. Think about it. She is the second to last match of the night. Her winning the belt. The fans went crazy. Wendy Richter was over. But because she wanted some serious money, because she was over, Vince McMahon decided nope. And not long after, the Spider Lady, who was played by Moolah, just steals the belt. Legitimately steals the belt from her. But that's not a Mania moment. Definitely not a Mania moment. Wendy Richter got her Mania moment at WrestleMania 1. And, of course, as a 12-year-old, I kind of was crushing on her because, well, wrestling at the time was a little different than now. Now there are no shortage of attractive young ladies in wrestling. Back then it was a little different. And, yeah, Wendy Richter, I was happy to see her win the belt when she did. This is a match I'm pretty sure they had on, I want to say, Superstars. There were a few different shows. There was Maple Leaf Wrestling, too, up here in Canada, where they would show, and Maple Leaf Wrestling, what I liked, too, was they would show the matches without the commentary. That was my favorite thing about Maple Leaf Wrestling. But then you get to the main event. The main event was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T against Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. The build this match got was huge, even though it's just a tag match where there's no belt on the line, and it's basically just for bragging rights. Now, Hogan and Mr. T end up winning. There's a little bit of shenanigans involved, where I believe it was Orndorff ate the pin. I think he got hit in the head with the cast that was being worn by Cowboy Bob Orton at ringside. That cast, Orton wore that for years. Years. Orton's arm took years for that to heal. But Roddy Piper being on the losing side, this is where the Hogan-Roddy Piper feud was big. It definitely helped to take wrestling to that next level, as this event did. But one interesting thing with this event is, so a little bit of shenanigans and Sheik and Volkov defeating the U.S. Express. Minor dusty finish to the main event. But generally, most of these matches didn't involve a ton of outside interference and run-ins and a ton of BS, which we see a lot now in pro wrestling. Now when you're watching a wrestling match, in the corner of your eye, you're going, who's going to come in and break this up? Who's going to run in? When are these guys running in? And back then, that didn't really happen that much. And if it did, it was kind of newsworthy because you're like, wow, did you see that? That happened. And now it's just so common, so commonplace. And I think part of it is that you'll have two wrestlers against each other, and they're booked to fight each other, but they're booked in a way where, well, we can't have either of these guys lose. And back then, it really felt like it was different. Like, I'm not saying wrestlers didn't protect their position and that wrestlers like losing, but it felt like there were more clean victories and more clean results back then than what we have now. But we'll go through the other Manias too, depending on how this one does. So I wanted to talk about WrestleMania 1. I have no problem going through the other WrestleManias as well, because I do remember most of them. And I will say most of them. At the very least, I was watching the wrestling around the WrestleMania. There are some WrestleManias that aren't as memorable. WrestleMania 1's memorable because it was the first. And it was Vince McMahon's answer to Crockett Promotions with Starrcade. And I, personally, as a wrestling fan at the time, preferred Starrcade to WrestleMania. And I know that may seem like sacrilege, but I preferred Starrcade for some of the same reasons that people will give for preferring AEW to WWE now. It felt like it was more of a wrestling program, and WWF was more entertainment than the wrestling. And the wrestling I just felt like was better in the NWA, who were putting on Starrcade. Although I think it was Worldwide Wrestling is what it was called on my television. But it was better. I thought it was a better wrestling product. Just did not have the production value that Vince McMahon had. And Vince McMahon at this point, of course, already starting to wipe out the territories, just absolutely steamroll the territories and consolidate everything together. Where they get guys like Junkyard Dog, as a for instance, that he was big, I think, down in Georgia before WWF picked him up. I think he was big as a heel too, but at any rate, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. So here's something different. Never said, hey, I'm going to go back and look at all the Manias. I never even really thought about it until, recently I've been sort of talking about how wrestling used to be and everything. So what better way of talking about how wrestling used to be than looking back at old events? All right, thank you guys so much for all your support as always. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. I will talk to you again soon.